Everyone. In just a second, I'm going to be introducing author Sia Sunrise Person. Isn't that such a cool middle name? I love that. She has two memoirs out. We're going to be talking about both of them. Her first one was called North to Normal, and the next one was called Nearly Normal. And they are about her childhood growing up in Canada. She had a very unique childhood, so I can't wait to talk to her about it. I love the style of her memoir writing, and she teaches memoir writing, so we're going to be talking about that too. And so, anyway, guys, here is Sia. Hi, everyone. I am so excited today to be speaking with author Sia Sunrise Person. And we're going to be talking about both of her memoirs. They've came out 2 years apart. The first one was called North of Normal, and then the new one is called Nearly Normal. And I am so happy to have you on here today. I was so excited when you said yes.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah, we have so much in common, but it's like you answered so many of my questions in some of the interviews I watched of you and parts of your book about memoir writing. And it was just so inspiring to me because even, your childhood is, we're going to talk about how unique that was, but everybody I think that everybody feels like their childhood is unique in a way, which is what memoir writing is so cool. But I think that I have met people that do have like totally normal childhoods, and it just blows me away because
I know, me too.
because mine was so not normal, but
Yeah.
but I found like so many consistencies, even though like there you are in Canada and having, your childhood. I'm from Pennsylvania. And my parents were absolutely crazy, but we lived, it was different. Like you lived like outside, like not with people. Like I went to school and functioned as if I was normal with this completely abnormal family, but
Great.
you know
So you're kind of hiding it.
yeah, well, right, I had to hide it a little bit more. You had to hide it too, but it was like
Yeah.
in a different way. But what I found, in all of the things that about us that I found unique is like your mom's name was Michelle, and
Yeah.
and my mom gave birth to me at 16 also.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes.
funny.
Well, she
Wow.
was 16. She just turned 17 right before I was born. Her birthday is right before mine. And
Right.
I find, I'm 53, so I'm a little bit older than you. But
hmm
what I find was when I was growing up, people, and I don't know if you experienced this, but people were like, how old is your mom? Like, because my mom looked young, and it looked like your mom looked young too.
Everyone always thought we were sisters.
And my mom loved that. I don't know about your mom.
Oh, she loved that.
Right.
And I found it so annoying.
Oh my God. I know. And my mom passed away a couple of years ago. So, I can talk about her in a sort of normal way now. But
Right.
but that was the most abnormal thing is I didn't think anybody understood because people would think it was cool. Like,
Yeah, totally.
wow, your mom's so young. Look at
Yeah,
your
they think it's so
mom.
cool that she's so young. And also, my friends thought my mom was so cool because she smoked pot all the time. They're like, "Wow, your mom is so awesome," and I'm like, "No, no."
I know. And I didn't like okay, so my mom did not young when my dad died young. My dad died when I was in my early 20s, and he was 19 turned 20 right before I was born.
Mhm.
So they did get married, and they had
Right.
their nice functionality together. But my dad was this pot smoker, and so
Uh,
I know, like, I knew exactly what you were talking about when people would be like, "Oh my God, your dad smokes pot. He's so cool." And I used to be
yeah,
like, "He's stoned, okay,
yeah,
guys."
exactly. Yeah, it's not cool to smell like pot smoke all the time.
It's really not. And he would buy me from like age 11 on for my birthday. I would get pot paraphernalia for my
Oh
birthday.
my God. Okay, you one upped me on that one.
I would get like a bowl that he'd get, like, or he'd get a friend to make a hand carved bowl, and he'd be like, "Here's your birthday present." I'm like, "I don't
That's so
smoke pot
funny.
yet, Dad. I don't know." Like, and
Oh,
because it was such a thing, I think that you and I like have a totally different, people, especially now. I mean, marijuana is starting, to become legal everywhere, but
mhm.
it wasn't cool for me. Like when kids started
Mhm.
smoking pot, I was like, and like
Yeah,
whatever.
me too. I just so wasn't interested.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
that I didn't, but I just wasn't. I don't know. It never did anything for me. But I think I was just raised around. I don't know. When it's
Yeah.
so a part of your family.
Totally.
But
Totally.
but your like I said, your story is definitely unique. But I found moments of reading your books that I actually had to stop and be like, okay, because a lot of it related so much that for me,
Right.
and I'm sure a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard that, which is
Mhm.
why I thought it was so brave of you to do this and, to be so out there because
Thank
for
you.
people like me, it really helped me. It really did. And
And that is exactly the reason I wrote my books, actually. I mean, I guess my first one started off as more of like I was trying to understand why my life was such a mess in my 30s.
yeah,
And I thought maybe if I can figure out my childhood, it can help me. And so, but that morphed into this whole thing of really wanting to connect with other people who had been through similar things because I felt so alone. I felt like such a freak. I felt like I was the only person who'd lived through such a weird childhood. So yes, that connection was a major motivator for me, and it's been amazing to hear all the stories out there.
I'm sure. I bet everywhere you go, like people are like, I understand because
Yeah.
I know that I'm not that unique. It's like unique, but not like I know that there are other people that have been
Mhm.
through
Mhm.
childhoods that, like I said, weren't completely
Right.
normal in any way. But I was trying to think. I saw your TED talk, and I
Hmm.
loved the last sentence of your TED talk, and I wanted you to say it because I was going to write it down, but it was about fear.
I don't
And
remember what it was.
oh, I should have written it down. It was really good though. I was like, that is such a good something about how fear, instead of going from it, like for it to motivate us. But
Oh, yeah.
right,
To make us motivate us to keep going forward.
right, because I think that those of us that have had childhoods where we've had to be brave or had to be like the parent, you had to be. I know that that's one thing that we probably relate on is like when your mom is a mess and you're
Yeah.
mothering your mom who like needs a
It's
mother.
so
Like
yeah, it's just
nobody
yeah,
understands that unless you actually. And that's why I was like, oh,
yeah.
she gets it because I used
Yeah.
to tell people and they'd be like, what are you talking about? Or I'd watch other mothers be mothers
I
and
know, me too.
I'd like yearn for a mother, like somebody that was going to
Exactly.
mother
Yeah.
me the way I
Yeah.
mothered her you know
Totally. I know.
and then of course my mom did die like your mom did. She died of cancer very quickly, and so in her last days I got to really be her mother in a
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
very real sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I
But
I get that.
yeah, right. So I'll let you tell everybody, because you can give kind of the quick synopsis for everybody who hasn't read the book about your childhood, and
Sure.
what you experienced.
Well, so I was born in the late 60s, and my family was living in California at the time. And my grandfather was a very unique man who had a lot of interesting beliefs. And one of them was that, um, the only way to truly be free in this life was to completely emancipate yourself from society. So, shortly after I was born, my grandfather took his whole family and moved them to the wilderness. And there we lived in teepees and, miles from civilization, surviving off of wild game and, plants that we found and, basically living life by our own rules. And this went on for basically the first decade of my life. However, my mother had me very young, and my father was not in the picture. So the thing that was missing from her life was romance. She wanted a man. And so her drive to find love really took us to quite a few, difficult places. So we would sort of, my first 10 years was sort of living part time with my grandparents in these teepees and being with my mom part time with whatever boyfriend she happened to be with. Crazy road trips. We had no money, so we'd sleep in random tents and abandoned cottages and farmhouses, and with friends or under teepees or wherever we could find a place to live in trucks. And so the really my whole story is about realizing from a very young age that I wanted a different life
Hmm.
and wanting something more normal. What was normal for me.
Right, what was normal. And I think that one of, like I always believe that some things happen for a reason, and in my head, that's kind of how I had to justify a lot of stuff.
Right.
But when I
Yeah.
was reading your story, what I was thinking about for you was that, I mean, you are so beautiful. And the fact that you ended up to be a model, like, that
Hmm.
was such a gift. Like
Yes, it
your
was.
looks were such a gift that they could get you into the modeling world and get you out
Yeah,
of
because
that,
it was my escape, and
Yeah.
I started dreaming of escape from my family from a very young age. And I was like, well, what can I do? What can I do? I'm stuck with my crazy mother until I graduate from high school. And then I had this crazy idea of becoming a model because I was always really tall and thin.
Yeah.
So when I was 13, I walked into a modeling agency that was holding a competition. And I was too young. You had to be 15, but I lied about my age.
Right.
And eventually I was disqualified because they found out my real age. But by then, my career was already launched because a photographer saw me and sent me to New York, and that was it. So
And that's
I started traveling on my own to New York and Europe when I was 14.
wow.
Hmm.
I know. That was like, I was just blown away, like when I found out the age, because especially now that you have children and I have children, it's
Yeah.
like you realize like how young that was. I mean,
Oh, it was
you know,
very young. And of course, we look at our kids and we could never imagine that. But, people, I always tell people it was very different for me because I was not raised in a sheltered way at all.
right.
And I was very self-sufficient from a young age, looking after my mother, looking after myself.
Hmm.
So going out into the big world at age 14 was seriously not much of a big deal for me.
Right. And what I love about Nearly Normal, your second book, I
Hmm.
love the way you wrote the memoirs because I kind of feel like you did, like when you're recalling a memory, right? And it just like comes up because I don't know. I don't know what happens to those memories or those stories,
Hmm.
but I remember always thinking that anybody I gotten close to, like they
Hmm.
didn't know the picture. So then these odd stories would just come out and they'd be like, where did, like, I don't know. It was always so disconnected, you know?
Yes, and that is the greatest challenge with writing memoir, because oh man, you're bound to the facts first
Right.
of all, and you're kind of trying to stuff all these random events and lessons of your life into this narrative arc that people actually want to read.
Yeah.
And so, deciding what to include and what to exclude, and how to tell your story, how to structure your story, all of those things is extremely difficult. And I struggled a lot with my first book. It took me 6 years to write it because I rewrote it many times because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
But my second book was much easier. I knew exactly how I wanted to tell it. I knew that I wanted that jumping back and forth in time structure.
Hmm.
And
I love that. I love that book.
thank you. Yeah, and I think it worked really well. But yeah, that is a major challenge with memoir writing.
Yeah. And I do think that anybody who's raised in a kind of a traumatic, you have these memories and you're like, where did, or like you're telling somebody about, you're trying to give the Cliff Note version of your life. And then you
Hmm.
realize like they don't know, like there are so many blanks and then it doesn't make
Yes.
sense. That's what I always struggled with, is that my life never made sense in any kind of chronological, you know
No, it doesn't, and even like if I look back on my life, I still have these, gaping holes and missing spots that can never be filled in because my family's all passed on now.
right.
Um, and it took me forever. I sat down with my mom before she died, and she helped me actually put a lot of it into chronological order because we were so crazy all over the place during those early years. But it's interesting how after you write a memoir, it changes your memories in a way, because I now, when I think about my childhood, don't really think about my childhood. I think about how I wrote it in my memoir.
Okay.
And so it's almost like I'm reading this story in my head all the time. It's very bizarre. But I've talked to other memoirists about that, and they have experienced the same thing.
That's awesome. And I experienced the same thing when my mom died. Before I didn't get enough. Like her cancer was very quick.
Hmm.
It was 3 months, and
Wow. Yeah.
and during those 3 months, there was only a month that I could have talked to her, really.
Right. Hmm.
So it was very quick. And
Yeah.
she would wake up, be awake, quote unquote, and I would like try to think of things. Like I'd be like, okay,
Right.
okay, how did how did this, and
Yeah.
she'd look at me like, what? And I'm like, it was just so difficult because I had this realization that once she died, those things were going to be gone.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to make, and I still have regrets over some of it that I didn't ask her, that I
Yeah.
wish I could have. But I think that when I was reading that about you, I was like, yeah, I so get that. Like, it's like, okay, quick,
Yeah.
like, because,
Totally.
my grandparents are gone, obviously, and my dad
Yeah.
was gone young, and he was
Mhm.
it was pancreatic cancer, very quick, done,
Wow. She was the last one.
yeah, she was the
Yeah.
last one, so it was
Yeah.
very urgent. But when my dad had passed away, she was 40. She was young,
Mhm.
like my
Mhm. Mhm.
and I was, I was in my 20s. But she would call me every single night in the middle of the night because she couldn't
Well,
sleep. I go to work and be like, I was on the phone with my mom for 3 hours last night. It's just it's insane. Now that I
yeah.
say it
Just
out
gotta,
loud, it's just like, what
yeah,
is
try and get all those last moments in.
right.
Yeah.
But I see that you're trying to help people write memoirs, and, which is awesome because you learned so much in the writing process and
I did.
publishing and everything for you. So what do you tell, like, I struggle, like, say, I never did it. I've always thought about it because
Mhm.
I've always thought that it would be very healing for me to do. And
Mhm.
I'm sure a lot of people think that way. I mean, did you find it very healing in the process of doing it?
Yes, certainly. Especially my second book, I think, because I think I've held a lot of, what's the right word? I guess, well, shame, guilt, all those
Shame.
things.
Yeah.
You know, being angry with myself for making many of the choices that I made as an adult, knowing that I could have done so much better.
Right.
And so I think that writing that second book really helped me connect my past with those circumstances and realize why I had made the choices that I had, and allowed me to kind of forgive myself for a
Yes.
lot of what I did wrong later. And that was something that was very necessary. And I don't know if that would have come about for me in any other way. I've done plenty of therapy in my life, have found 95% of it to be completely useless.
Me too. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and what I do tell my students, and I'm not doing a lot of teaching right now because I'm focused on writing other books, but what I do tell my students when they first start is that, if you're not ready to write your story from a place of objectivity, if you still feel anger and you feel like you want to point the finger at, people who wronged you in your writing, then you're not ready, and you need to go and you need to do some work on yourself before you can actually sit down and make it into a story that will engage other people. Of course, you can do those angry writing exercises. They're
Right.
great for, for your development and
Right.
your own therapy, but that is not how you can write a memoir that anyone's going to want to read. So,
That is so true because I know that if I pick up a memoir and all of a sudden I sense hurt and anger
yes, or self-pity.
or self pity, yeah, if I set it down, I'm like, I can't go
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
especially having been through like what we have, it's like I can't put myself through that emotion,
Exactly.
So I'm always kind of like, when I pick up a memoir, I'm always like, okay, and it's about a childhood, I'm always like, okay. And that's why I loved yours, so because I knew, I was like, oh, okay, she's on the other side.
Yeah.
Especially the second one was so way, so
Totally.
self-aware, so
Yeah.
self-aware. And when I, in a weird way, I feel like it's when I look at my childhood, it's kind of like not taking responsibility, but taking responsibility for how I react to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And because that is the one thing we can always control.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it really is a matter of just, deciding that, okay, enough is enough. Yes, these people wronged me, but there's a point in your life when you need to just become the adult and decide to rise above and make something good out of your life anyway. And to be a better, you know, to be a better parent to your own children. I mean,
Yes.
that's the way I always measure my, I guess my healing and my level of success. And people without children, probably have a different way of doing it. But for me, it's really like, am I being a better parent to my children than mine was to me? And hopefully, will they be better parents to their children than I was to them? let's try and improve it down the line.
Right. And my children do have children now. My older children
Mhm.
have children now, and it's kind of funny because I saw all the things that I did better than my parents, you know. So
Right.
when they would come back at me with, "But what about this?" and and I'd say, "Well, then go ahead, do it, do it better." You
Yeah,
know?
right.
I only did better that I knew. Now you can do better with what you know.
Exactly. Exactly. That's totally it.
you know so
Yeah.
they have that opportunity. And I have the opportunity to sit by and watch my grandchildren and have fun with it watching
Excellent.
that. But another thing is so your children are fairly young. Your
Yeah.
oldest son is he a teenager now or close?
So my kids are 6, 7, and 12.
12. Okay, I knew he was like kind of close.
Yeah. Hmm.
How do you feel about them reading your story eventually?
Oh, I'm fine with it. I
Good.
mean, I've had plenty of 11, 12, 13-year-olds read my story and, tell me that they enjoyed it. So, of course, it's a different thing when it's your own child, but,
Right.
yeah, obviously I will talk to them as they go through it and I find that it's a story that can open conversations about things like
Right.
sex and drugs
Yes.
and so, that's only a positive thing. And at the age of 12 and 13, you need to be having those conversations anyway. My oldest son is not really interested in reading my books, which is fine.
Right.
Um, but hopefully that'll change someday. My
Yeah.
middle son really wants to read it, but he's only 7.
I know. I found that with my older children when they got to the age that pot was a thing, like I
Yeah,
kind of freaked out a little bit, like with it. Like I didn't do well with it.
right.
My initial because I was a young parent too. I had my
Yeah,
son at 23, and I when he got to that age, I was like, no, 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 you don't understand. And you go in. Oh, this is the part I wanted to talk about. You go into the genetics of
right.
and oh my gosh, I have 6 children, okay, and
Oh, wow.
I really like my parents were so mentally and beyond, okay, and
Yeah,
I was thinking that I'm like, okay, first I had to go through what am I, and then I had to
yeah.
go through what am I bringing into this world, like
Mhm,
children that are
mhm.
going to have to suffer with this kind of and you actually went
Exactly.
through with the testing. I didn't even know that you could have it at that time, and
Right,
maybe I couldn't have, but
right.
I so understood your pain because I was like, oh my God, of course. Like I used to think
Yeah,
about
I
that
was
all the
speaking
time.
out, like mental health issues. I was just like, I can't have any more mental health issues in my life. I just
Right.
can't do it,
Right.
And I didn't get any answers from those tests, but I did get 3 very healthy children, and I still feel like I was rolling the dice somehow. I had my kids, but I ended up very lucky.
Yeah, and I saw not just my parents, but like you, I saw grandparents and aunts and uncles and all exhibit
Yeah,
signs of mental health issues. And
yeah,
and it's not as concrete. Like you come up with a disease and it's like kind of very concrete, but when you think about mental health, it's
yeah,
so it's all like you said, it's
yeah,
like it's like how they were raised, how they this we can only help what we
exactly,
can help, but
exactly.
as I was reading I was like, yes, yes, I so get
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, there were some issues that were, labelable. There, we had schizophrenia in our family, we had bipolar, we had depression, and well, I'm pretty sure my grandfather had a narcissistic personality
I think
disorder.
he did. After reading it,
You
I'm
know,
going to agree with you on that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But my mother, there was nothing to label the way she was. And she just, she was a beautifully loving person, but she was slow, and I don't know what that is. And that was what
Kind of
scared
scared. Yeah, and she was beautiful. The pictures of her that I saw in the book, I mean,
me.
she was a beautiful person.
Yeah, she was.
She was stunning.
Absolutely.
I thought stunning, especially when you take into consideration that she wasn't really like dyeing her hair, putting makeup on every day.
No, no,
It
she
was
was
like this
natural.
inner beauty. You know what I mean? Like yeah, like it was more like that. That I saw
Yeah.
the picture and I was like, wow, she's a really beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thank
it
you.
it's anyway. I okay. So you have those out, and I saw that you're actually writing novels now. So are you like done for the most part with the memoirs of the
Totally
past?
done.
Yeah.
So done. Yeah, it's been a great experience. I've loved it. But I really am done with writing about my life and I want to move on.
Yeah,
So
because you have so much that's happy now. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
you
And
know,
I love writing. I mean, writing is my passion for sure. So if I can make this transition, it'll be really rewarding for me.
how did you
For,
go about learning? Like now that you're learning how to write a novel,
yeah,
is it so much? I mean, I'm assuming only because I talk to people all the time, and it's such a
yeah.
different art form than a
Oh my
memoir.
God, it's so different. I can't even tell you. And of course, I made the mistake of thinking, oh, I've written 2 books. It's going to be
I'm
easy,
a published author.
a published author, no problem. And oh my God, I struggled so badly writing my first novel. It took me 10 months, and then I read it over and I said, you know what? I hate this. And I basically deleted the whole thing. And then I wrote 2 more, got halfway through 2 more, again, frustrated both times, chucked them. And then I got an idea for a fourth one, and it was such a strong, it was like this, it's like the book was living inside me.
Mm.
And I wrote the entire thing in 3 weeks. So yeah, no, it was crazy. Yeah. So that's the one that, I'm going with. And it's going through the process of being read by my publisher or sorry, by my agent
Yeah.
right now. And so hopefully, she'll like it as much as I do and we'll move forward. But it just goes to show that, you can take a long, long time struggling with something and it's never going to be right.
Hmm.
Or you can just wait for the right idea to come along and then it's just all right there.
Yeah, the passion to wake up. I've always heard people say if you can want to wake up like at 5 o'clock in the morning to write it,
Yeah,
or stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning knowing that you have an early, but you're that passionate about it,
that's right.
you know. And I
And
think
that's
J.K.
exactly
Rowling
how it
used to do
was.
that.
I
She
was
right,
just,
all the
luckily my husband was able to help with the kids during the time, and I was writing like 7,000 words a day. So
wow, that's
it's
awesome.
crazy.
Well, I can't wait to hear about it. I can't wait for
Thanks.
it to come out because I do think that you are a gifted writer. I mean, I
Thank
don't
you.
think that, anybody could have stayed interested. It wasn't just about, I mean, this story is so good, but I mean, the writing has to be good or you're just going to put it down. And your
Yeah, of
reviews have
course.
shown, I see on Amazon, you have such amazing reviews for this book. You must be just thrilled with these 2 books. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's been everything I could have imagined for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, best of luck with you. And, you know where to find me when it comes out because I'd love to talk to
I
you
will let
about
you
it.
know. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
talk about it. I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to talk about something other than my life.
Right. The imaginary world. But anyway, I
Yes.
will have all of your links listed so people can find you. And
Thank you.
thank you so much, Sia. This has been so much fun.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. Bye bye. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.
Everyone for watching. If you made it this far, that means you watched the whole interview, and I just want to thank you. I love talking to Sia. Her books are amazing, both of them. After you read the first one, you're going to want to go get the second one. So, thank you, Sia. Thank you. That was incredible. I will have all of Sia's links listed underneath here. And if you liked watching us, please hit like. If you'd like to see my videos every day, please hit subscribe.